Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. What I'd like to do is our usual HPC market update and share with you some interesting findings that we found in our recent research studies. We also are posting more information primarily because of COVID, but also to help the community more under the sample projects tab on our webpage. And for those of you who don't know us, here's our research team and our operations and global accounts teams. We have good coverage in a lot of different areas, and we have some relatively new members that have been contributing tremendously. So to start with, the HPC on-prem server market last year in 2020 was actually up a slight amount, 13.7 billion. Now, we were expecting the market to be down because of COVID, but what happened here is the Recon system, which came in at just over $1 billion, actually was large enough to cause the market to show some slight growth. And you can see here for the supercomputers, there was almost 6 billion purchased, divisional just under 3 billion, departmental just under 4 billion, and work group around 1.4 billion. And going forward, and I'll walk through some of the numbers, we expect major or healthy growth in major sections of these, and then not so healthy growth in some of them. In particular, the work group or the lower end of the market is under the most pressure right now. To show you some new different charts that the way we track the market, this one is showing the change each quarter in the market. You've often heard us refer to the market as a roller coaster market where there's a lot of up periods, then down periods, up periods, and down periods. And this is kind of showing that cycle. And the last 2 quarters is back to growth, which is good to see. But quite frankly, with COVID, supply chain issues, when the exascale machines may or may not be accepted, we still have tremendous uncertainty as far as what's going to happen for the second half of the year. And again, looking at the last full year of data we have 2020, here's how it's split out by the different verticals and how the vendor shares split out last year. And you can see there continues to be some shifts going on here. HPE did very well. And of course, in this year, Fujitsu did tremendously well with the Recon sale, almost hitting 10% of the market. And then look by region, or looking at regions and their change since 2019 to 2020, you can see North America showed the COVID decline. So did EMEA, Europe, Middle East, and Africa. Asia Pacific without Japan, which is heavily driven now by China, is at least the largest consumer there, actually showed slight growth. And then Japan showed the major growth because of Recon. And looking at the broader market beyond the on-prem servers, but the support portions, the add-on storage, middleware applications, and repair services, roughly doubles the market, but it's been running roughly at 27.5 billion dollars. So it's still robust, and quite frankly, given all the issues with COVID, and what's happened, it's just surprising to me that the market has held its ground. And you've seen this chart before. So this is our tracking of the very high end of the market, the exascale systems. We're looking at and tracking very closely over 30 systems, and they represent over 11 billion in value. And if you look in the last column, that's kind of summary for each year, how much value they're adding to the market. Last year was the billion from Recon. We expect perhaps roughly a billion from some pre-exascale machines this year. And then the exascale machines really kick in at between 2 and 3 billion a year. And they represent a major growth factor in the market and actually a major portion of the market itself. So it's just amazing what's going on the higher end of the market. And again, kind of taking a historic or longer term view of the market, this particular chart shows 15 years of history and 5 years forecast. This again kind of shows that roller coaster factor here. And for one of the first times, usually our forecasts are somewhat linear. We're expecting that 2025 might not show the same growth because you see just so much robust growth that we're expecting in 2022, 2023, and 2024. And you can see in the middle there in the COVID period in that, we actually are seeing 4 flat years. So again, you have this lot of ups and downs in the market. Underlying the main growth in the whole market is between 7 and 8% if you take a very long-term view as far as yearly growth. And this is the same chart, but looking at the processors. We use processors in our core data set to kind of represent performance capabilities and that, but this is processor counts. And again, you see the same roller coaster effect. But right now, the market is consuming between 3 million to over 5 million base processors a year. And I should have mentioned that these do not include the accelerators, the GPUs, and that. These are the base processors in the systems. Now, if a system is built 100% with GPUs, those systems would be counted here. And with that as a kind of the market background, I'd like to walk through some interesting findings from our multi-client studies. Every 18 months in the past, we're now moving to every year. We do a very long survey, and I thank the community for taking the time to do these surveys. It can be up to an hour and a half for doing one of the surveys, so it covers every area of the industry. So I want to start with coprocessors and GPUs because our forecast here in this area we expect tremendous growth. So right now, over 82% of the respondents in the study have at least one GPU or coprocessor in the system. And this is just up tremendously, from last year, going from 69% to 82%. Now, underneath that, though, still many of the systems don't have that many GPUs, so it's not a one for one for the base processor and the GPUs. But so the ones that only have a few processors, when we survey them, they're in the test mode, and the ones that have more processors have figured out where it fits, where it's going. But AI with machine learning and deep learning, we're expecting to really have an impact here as far as the growth rate in GPUs and coprocessors. And like I said, we rarely show a forecast with this hockey stick growth. We're usually very conservative in our forecasting, but a big portion of this growth here is just out of those exascale machines. They represent a sizable portion of the market, and the GPUs and coprocessors are being sold across the whole market. But I'm just saying that the exascale machines will consume a large portion of them. And then in the AI, machine learning, deep learning area, which we're doing many studies each year right now. I believe this year we'll end up doing about 6 different studies in the AI space. This amazing part to us is the majority of the respondents in the survey are using an AI application at least some of the time or somewhere in what they're doing. Sometimes the AI application is just setting up the data. Sometimes it's embedded within their actual traditional modeling and simulation applications. Sometimes it's just post processing of data, or it could be a regular machine learning, deep learning algorithm altogether. But we're expecting to see just tremendous growth here. You can see that half the survey sites, 56% runs some kind of big data AI workload today in the cloud. And in the cloud, we expect it to move to about 75% within 18 months from this study. So using AI in the cloud is growing dramatically. So here's our updated for AI forecast. We've added going out to 2025. If you look at the first row, that's the on-premise server systems, and we expect that to grow just under 7%. Then if you look at the HPDA, which includes big data AI altogether, that's growing roughly twice as much at close to 16%. And then if you look at the subset of AI, machine learning, deep learning, other technologies, we're actually seeing a growth rate and expecting a growth rate of greater than 30%. And you can see that deep learning is the area that's growing the most, but machine learning represents the bulk of the market. And these are the primary areas. We actually spent a lot of time tracking these and trying to figure out which areas are going to be the largest commercial success, meaning which area of these areas will purchase the most HPC or AI-based systems. And right now, this is the top set that we have. They're not in priority order. They're just in different disciplines, whether it's precision medicine, automated driving systems, fraud detection, and so on. And we've been doing a lot more work in the IoT, edge, smart city area, because that we found 4 or 5 years ago is where people were doing a lot of the research and investments. And now we're seeing that to be used much more broadly and integrating all of that in with the HPC system. And the biggest finding of our whole study is the use of clouds. And this is the first study we've conducted where cloud computing will actually take budget away from on-premise computing. All the studies we've done prior to this one showed that on-premise budgets were staying the same, and then people were finding more money to spend in the cloud. And this is the first time that we found nearly 30% of the respondents indicated they would reduce the amount they spend on premises and spend that money in the cloud. Now, in many cases, this is not a major shift yet. So the actual dollar amount isn't large, but the fact that so many sites are either going to buy less on-premise or delay their on-premise purchase, by an extra quarter, maybe half year. 5% actually said that they will do the conversion, stop buying on-premise data centers and move to the cloud. Now, that's just a total shock to us, frankly, because in the past, we've never seen more than one site or two sites, but we're actually seeing a percent of sites that are moving everything to the cloud right now. And so here's our updated cloud forecast. We're expecting to see yearly cloud growth over 17% a year over the next 5 years. And this forecast does include the COVID-19 impacts, which actually increase cloud adoption for many organizations. Now, the major shift we're seeing here is still at the very low end of the market. So the work group segment is the one moving to the cloud, and that's driving it from COVID impacts. But in the latest study we just did, we found that there were some very large, substantial sites. A lot of them are in the finance area, in more traditional business areas that are moving their HPC environment purely into the cloud. And that's driving some of the dollar value at the very high end of the market right now. So we're expecting another tipping point. In 2019, the market actually grew $1 billion faster than we were expecting. And we're expecting another one of those. Maybe it's this year, maybe it's next year. And any one, two or three of these events could cause this to happen. And dramatic additional improvements in running hard HPC jobs in the cloud. You'll hear during our user forum here how UK Med actually moved everything in the cloud, and Microsoft provided a Cray resource to do that. So that situation is exactly addressing the first bullet here. The next one is to sizable improvement in the ease of use and ease of deployment into clouds. Right now, for the majority of jobs, or a lot of jobs, you have to really change your code, reconfigure, redesign it fundamentally to work in a cloud environment. And as that gets easier or not required as much as the clouds get more capable, that's going to cause a major shift here. And the other items here, like I said, any two or three of these happen can literally have $1 billion impact on the cloud purchases. And this is a snapshot of what the total market would look like if you include the spending in the cloud. So it's a little bit apples and oranges, but it's all around spending. So spending on premise for either the server, service, application, middleware, or spending in the cloud itself. And in total, we expect this to cause the 2024 market to reach about $47 billion. Then I'd like to address some software trends. We're seeing that job sizes are growing in scale and complexity quite dramatically. 40% of the respondents said that their number one application now runs for more than 24 hours. And of course, many run much longer than that. But that's a major shift from previous studies to have that large of the sites running literally problems that run more than 24 hours. The operating system preferences, Red Hat, no surprise, is the most popular right now. CentOS, Ubuntu, and Linux are also popular choices. Also, of course, use of parallel programming models and languages continue to grow. The other interesting thing here is the average across the survey sites were 6 different parallel programming languages or models were used at each site. So not only is it growing dramatically, the number of different languages per site are growing tremendously. So in summary, we were expecting the pandemic to impact the 2020 market by about an 8% decline, but thank you to Riken and the Fugaku system, it actually turned into a growth year. We do expect that 2021 to be roughly a flat year, and then 2022 to 2024 are expected to be very strong growth years. This is driven, as I mentioned, about with the exascale machines, AI, big data are just fueling growth all across the board. And in addition, the use of clouds to run HPC applications, we're seeing dramatic growth in that area. The fascinating part about the market too is we have all these new technologies showing up all over the place. New types of processors, coprocessors, AI-specific hardware and software, new memory approaches, new interconnects. So just tremendous new infusion of new technologies and new ideas right now. And also, we expect that storage to see major growth. We're actually working very closely on trying to better understand our storage forecasts because with AI, big data, in particular when machine learning, deep learning become more successful as far as in the application and everything else, they will require dramatic shifts in storage. So we're thinking that there might be a tipping point in the storage market coming up in the next year or a couple years. And if you have any questions, please feel free to let us know, and we'd be glad to start a conversation.